This is the Birth of a Mama podcast, where birth, and especially postpartum, matter. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Birth of a Mama podcast. Today, I have Gina Mundy on the show. Gina, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, Natalie, thank you for having me. I'm so excited for today's conversation.
Yes, I'm so excited you're here. So let's start off with you telling the listeners about yourself and your family.
Oh, sure. So I live in Michigan. I have three kids. The two oldest are girls. Abby is 19, Eliana is 15, and then I got Liam, my 9-year-old boy. So I think he keeps us all grounded. I am an attorney, and I specialize in childbirth cases. So, I've done this for about 21 years. And just so your audience understands what that is, because most people don't understand. I didn't know what it was. I stumbled on it back, 21 years ago. But basically, during the birth of a child, when something goes wrong, whether it's a mistake or complication, then I'm the attorney on the case. And I come in and I find out, what happened, what went wrong. So more recently, in June 2023, I took that experience of seeing the mistakes and complications, and I authored a book. With my girls being older, grandkids, starting to be on the radar. So I wanted to, basically write down, for them especially, what they needed to know to make sure, they had, I had healthy grandkids. But once I started writing, I'm like, this is really something all moms could benefit from. So yeah, it's been a wild ride in my house for the last probably couple of years now, because it all started March. It must have been March 2022. So yeah, last couple of years in my house have been a little crazy while mom writes a book. But my kids have stepped up. My husband stepped up. He makes dinner and all the fun stuff. So yeah, we're just, we're all hanging out now in Michigan. I have all my kids home because it's a huge winter icy storm. So we're just hanging out here in Michigan today.
I love it. I love that you've written a book and you're doing such amazing work in the attorney space. I think we need more of that. I hear a lot of horror stories, so I'm sure you've heard a lot of them as well. But talk about your book for a second. What is the title of the book, and what do you talk about in the book?
Oh, so the title is A Parent's Guide to a Safer Childbirth. And basically it shows parents how to have a healthy baby and make sure, the complications and mistakes that I have seen over the last 21 years, does not happen during the birth of their baby. I'll tell you, the hardest part of my job is the day when I have to sit down with the families and they have to tell me about their day, their baby was born or their baby, didn't make it during childbirth. So it's very, it's been heartbreaking for me to be in this profession over the years. And I always wondered, people are like, how can you do this? How can you do this? And I never really saw my calling until about 2 years ago. We had a near family tragic event when my niece had a very difficult birth, with the the baby of our next generation, the first one. And so it was kind of, took me out of the grind a little bit and was like this human experience, oh, wait a minute, I know some stuff. Because in her labor in her childbirth was very similar to what I see in my cases. I do see reoccurring issues and reoccurring facts. So, chapter 11, for instance, goes over the, common issues, common facts that are in baby cases that every parent needs to know to make sure it doesn't happen during the birth of their baby. So while I bring it up, then I'm like, okay, and this is how to make sure you have a safe, childbirth. Because my book's not about what can go wrong, but how to make sure, it goes right. So, and then chapter 1 is another important lesson. And that one is the lessons that we can learn from the baby cases. As a lesson, you learn from it in order to prevent it from happening again. So there's just a bunch of great stuff in the book that, parents can really use, to make sure they have a healthy baby. It's definitely not your typical pregnancy book.
Yeah, sounds like it. Well, thank you for sharing that. And sounds like maybe geared more towards a hospital birth, so that specific setting versus a birth center or a home birth?
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah. I know. Well, we hear all about, at least I do, all about, hospitals you know, debatably not being the safest place, depending, right? Because of like all the interventions that can happen and how interventions can often lead to things like emergency C-sections that may or may not have needed to happen if all the other interventions hadn't happened in the first place. But
Natalie, you just hit it right. That's exactly what my cases are.
really, yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I'm so impressed that you just said that. Okay, for me, that's very second nature because this is what I do. But yeah, like for instance, chapter 11, the number one most common fact in a childbirth case is Pitocin. Pitocin is the drug that is used to induce mom's labor. It makes her contract and so forth. Right. So then you give mom Pitocin. So now she's having strong contractions, sometimes too many contractions. Mom, epidural, another intervention. And it's like it's like there's the cases are so similar. It's like a cascade of interventions
Mm-hmm.
until something bad happens. So
Yeah.
yes, I mean the the pregnancies and the deliveries that are more all natural, I don't see those as much. It's the definitely hospital based, medicated intervention type, labors that are really come through in my cases.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I would expect you to say. I'm a total birth nerd and I trained to be a birth doula back in, what was it, maybe like 2015. So yeah,
Okay.
I've studied birth and, physiologically normal, healthy birth and what that looks like and how if that's, let to happen and unfold as it will, in its own time, then the chances of things going wrong are really low. Not impossible, of course. Stuff still does happen, and there is times, when emergency really is happening and care is needed. But most
Right.
of the time, that's not the case. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, no, I'm impressed. Very impressed with your knowledge. So usually I'm the one explaining that. So yes, I can
Right.
I can see your education shining through right now.
Yeah. Well, let's have you describe the transition into motherhood. So, your motherhood experience in 3 words. I know it's kind of hard to just choose 3 words, but if you had to, which 3 words would you choose?
Hectic, fun, love. Those are the first three words that popped in my mind. So that's hectic, but I'll tell you, we do have a very hectic life here. My husband is a very busy business owner. I, to this day, am still a partner in a law firm. So we're definitely of the mentality of work hard, play hard. So while all of us will be working really hard, and then we'll go play hard. So it's definitely a hectic life, but it's a lot of fun. And we're just so grateful that, we have our nucleus, our family that we just love being together.
Yeah, I love that. I grew up with a similar kind of philosophy around life, like the work hard, play hard. My dad also owned his own business, so he was always working. But when we did have time off, like the weekends and stuff, we had fun. So I love that. All right. So, what were your expectations of postpartum? Like, did you go into pregnancy with any expectation of what it would be like after you had your baby the first time? And then did that change at all the second time? And did your partner have any expectations?
Oh, I had no clue. I was just trying to get through the pregnancy, and I was just excited to have a new baby. Nobody really explains what that means. Especially me. Remember, my oldest is 19. So this is years ago. Moms today are so lucky to have people like you that are, doing podcasts like this. Like, hey, heads up. These are the things moms are experiencing, and whatnot. I didn't have any of that. So no, and I was young and, I was so focused on working and just trying to have at that point have a healthy baby because of what I was seeing on a day-to-day basis being pregnant. In my cases was that was very challenging for me. So yeah, no, I had expectations. I just was going to have a baby and everything was going to be great. That was probably it. And obviously it gets a little hectic at the during that time. Things, lack of sleep. No one told me about lack of sleep or anything like that, or being barely able to eat, or all that stuff that's crazy that we experience as moms.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I mean, even today, I feel like many of the women either had, all very positive expectations of what it would be like after baby. Everything would just be, you'd be so happy because it's everything you've ever wanted was having this baby. And so I don't think it's
Mhm.
far off, even though it was 19 years ago for your first one. Um, so let's jump into you talking about how did your first pregnancy go, or if you want to talk about your most recent, and we can work backwards.
So I would start with my first one. That's 19 because that'll kind of set the stage for my other ones.
Okay.
Um, so keeping in mind what I do, I didn't think that I was going to be able to relax enough to have a baby naturally. The other attorneys that were on my team, the baby lawyers, I mean, they were having C-sections because they're like, nope. But that was back in 2004, where elective C-sections were, still there's a little borderline. I know one of my girlfriends told her doctor she had herpes because back then, if you have herpes, you get a C-section, and she got her C-section. And I'm like, I'm not putting that in my medical record that I have herpes. And I remember like, what? No. So I had found a very conservative, low risk doctor because, again, of what I do, but that he was also really pro vaginal birth. So, um, basically, it was right around 40 weeks. It was April 4th. So her birth, 4 2004. Just I went into labor. I mean, I woke up with crazy contractions and I woke up to it. And I'm like, oh my goodness, get the baby. Your body just wants to get the baby out to stop the pain. It's like this natural, reaction. So we jumped in the car and, sped to the hospital as fast as we could. But I mean, I went in like, breathing through contractions. It was crazy how fast it came on. So then they got me into my room, and I mean, the contractions were awful. So they were like, okay, we're going to give you an epidural. And I'm like, of course, like, and, and then so Abby's heart rate kept dropping, and they didn't wait long. We probably could have done some more interventions because usually what they do is if there's concerns about the baby's heart rate, they'll do interventions or they'll try to bring the baby's heart rate back up for a while, before they just C-section. But I think with me and what I do, because I can, one of the first things we learn how to do as baby lawyers is read the baby's heart rate. Um, but, so I'm kind of watching it go down a little bit. And from what I know now, I think they intervened, like, oh, let's just do a C-section. You wanted it anyway. So it was off to the C-section room. And yeah, but that one, because I had gone into labor and like that natural, just get the baby out of me type mentality, because that's really where, how I was at the beginning. That was a much easier C-section. But I'll tell you, then I chose to have a C-section for my next two. And to just go to the hospital, like not in labor, sit in the waiting room knowing that you're about to have a C-section may be one of the most freakiest things ever because you don't have your body doesn't have those natural cues like it's time. So it was definitely the mentality of a elective C-section versus going to natural labor is so much different. It was nuts.
Yeah, I could imagine that would. I mean, it's major abdominal surgery, but when you're already in labor and you've got all the hormones going and you're like, this is happening, like we're having this baby,
Mhm.
you're already ready. But when you're
Yeah, so
not,
the baby, because I'm sure most moms experience this, but I mean, I remember during pregnancy, I would look down, and I'd be like, how is even with Liam, the last baby, the baby has to come out of me, But because you're calm and you're not in that state of labor, it's just a very odd feeling, where labor kind of makes it like, okay, just get up, just get the baby out. I don't care how the baby comes out. I remember that feeling when I went into labor.
yeah, it's because our rational, like logic brain gets shut off when we're in labor because we go more into like, okay, it's almost like this instinctual place we go of like, I need to birth this baby. That's what's happening. Nothing else matters. But when you're not
Mhm.
in labor land yet, you're like thinking, you're like overthinking it, like how, wait a minute, this is going to be really intense. I
Oh
don't know if I'm ready
yeah.
for this, because you're thinking about it logically with your rational brain. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So those were my deliveries. Now, pregnancy wise, they took me off work early for all three. My job was so stressful,
Yeah.
and I was traveling the country, working, it's litigation. I mean, I was in trial pregnant. Um, I had a lot of contractions, and they were more like false labor contractions.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll tell you, the minute I went off work, contraction stopped. So I think that's definitely a good, lesson for moms because they're like, "Oh, you don't have cervical change. You're okay." And it's like, I don't yet, but if I keep contracting, who knows what's going to happen? So I always thought that was something, if you're stressed out or anything like that, it's just very important to try to bring yourself down because also when you're stressed out, you know, you could have high blood pressure. Maybe your blood's not flowing. Well, guess what? Your baby needs that oxygen rich blood. So you need to make sure that you're not too stressed out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And we know now too, if you're stressed, the stress hormones, like that does actually affect your baby. Yeah, being stressed in pregnancy is actually a bigger deal than I think maybe we even make it. Like a lot of people's jobs are very high stress. Even my job when I was pregnant, I remember I had moments of like almost having panic attacks from the level of stress that I was under. And that's so
Wow.
not good for not only you, but yeah, your baby as well, because they're actually having feeling the effects of that, and they can last into their life outside of the womb as well. So,
You
definitely
know,
important. So,
yeah, that's it's scary. And my cousin, I'm actually going to write another book more on this. My first one is just childbirth. This next one is going to be more pregnancy. But I mean, her with her first baby, she's like me, very stressful job, and she had preeclampsia. I mean, hypertension. Baby had to be delivered early. Everything was like basically a complete disaster, and she worked up until the day she delivered. And then her second baby, and so another girl at work had a very similar experience. The first babies were before COVID, so they were traveling everywhere, very stressful. They both had preeclampsia, they both had hypertension, and COVID hit, and they both got pregnant again. But COVID slowed the world down. So their jobs were not stressful for the second baby, and they'd never had hypertension. They didn't have preeclampsia. They didn't have the contractions, nothing. So she's a big advocate. She's like, Gina, I want this in your next book. And I'm like, okay, because I agree with that. But yeah, what stress can do, and I think in, the medical community, you can't measure it per se. So if you can't measure it, sometimes it doesn't exist. But me, you, people who are, in this, area, yeah, stress is bad. So if you have a stressful job and you're listening to this and you're like me, just have your doctor take you off work. And don't
yeah.
expect your doctor to pick up on the fact you may need to go off work. Doctors typically follow guidelines. So let's say you're contracting, but you're not having cervical change. Your doctor may be like, well, just try to rest when you can. I don't think there's this guideline for doctors that says if your patient's really stressed out, tell her to, not go to work. Without that, doctors sometimes it doesn't like cross their mind and whatnot. Now, listen, you could have a really great doctor who's going to step in and be like, no, we're done. I had a really great doctor who was like that, but a lot of other doctors are not. So it's important that you as a mom to advocate,
Mm-hmm.
take me off. If you're too stressed out, you have another baby at home, you're working, take it off. Take it off. I'm telling you. And then the A type personality part of me was like, I'm not going to get promoted to partner. I'm, all this, what's my case is going to do without me? Yeah, listen, 19 years later, I don't even remember what case I was working on, and it didn't affect me. So, but kind of in the moment, I get it, if you were like I was starting a new job. So, but yes,
Yeah.
stress. So just take
Mm-hmm.
it, just make sure you're relaxing.
Right. Exactly. Because we're always going to have stress. That's the thing is like, I think sometimes people can kind of get confused, like, okay, you're telling me like don't be stressed out during pregnancy. Well, how do I do that? Like, my life is just going to be sometimes inherently stressful, right? We're humans, that's part of life. But
Mhm.
how you respond to it, how you deal with it, right? Like your resiliency, the coping mechanisms you have. So figure out some things that you know you really enjoy, that make you feel good, that make you feel like you can just kind of like melt. We want more of that
Mhm.
happening, right? And less of the like tensing and you're holding your breath and you're not breathing and your heart rate's rising and you feeling like you're gonna just break. We want less of that. So
Dude, well
it's okay
said.
if there's,
Well said.
yeah, it's okay if there's some stress in your life. Like, we're not
Hmm.
saying, erase and eliminate every single stressful aspect of your life, because that would probably induce more stress because it's impossible, right? You get stressed about not stressing.
Hmm.
That's not helpful. But yeah, if we can just find more things that make you feel at ease and that make you feel comfortable and safe, and just try to focus on those things more. And that could be a whole podcast episode in and of
Yes,
itself. But
I love it.
yeah. Okay, well, we talked about your birth experiences, so it was all three C-sections, right?
Yes.
Yeah, except the first one was different from the other two, because the other two you went in and it was like you weren't completely in labor yet, so it was a little bit more of like a, oh God, this is gonna happen to me kind of an
Hmm.
experience.
Oh yeah.
So how were those moments right after birth? Like, do you remember the difference between the three? They were all C-sections, but was there any difference for those like immediate moments after birth? Did you breastfeed? Did you get to go home immediately? Did you have a long hospital stay?
So I was so grateful to have a healthy baby, because again, in my cases, as part of being the attorney in the case, I have to sit down, with the families. And I would have to go through, the day their baby was born or the day their baby passed away. And, it's something that's really hard to come. I don't think they can come back from that.
Yeah.
They describe it as kind of pre-life, post-life,
Mm.
the birth and then after the birth. And
Yeah.
so, especially by the time I got to Liam, I was 11, 12 years into the industry, and the families I had come across, the heart-wrenching stories, the everything, I was probably more scared than anything with him. By then, I was 38 years old, so it's a little bit, older. At that point, I'm like, am I going to pass away? It's just the stuff that runs through my head it's not going to, run through most people's head. It's just because of what I've seen. But yeah, those moments after birth were amazing because I was able to have those, my healthy kids. Because I'm sure, like most moms, I've been dreaming of that moment when I had my baby since I was a child playing with baby dolls. So to, just always think, and how's it going to be and whatnot. But then to be able to, enjoy that powerful moment, with my husband and my family was just, it was, it was amazing.
Good.
And
Yeah,
then
you have.
postpartum, I'm like, yes, I'm literally going back to that moment because I just
Yeah.
appreciated it so much. And then, yeah, I breastfed my kids as long as I could. Liam, I had a little more time off, so he was better. But, the other two girls, I was still pretty, Abby, I was pretty young in my career. Pretty early, I should say, pretty early in my career. So, it was give birth to Abby, let's go, let's go. So that was harder to keep going, but I would take the pump to work and as long as I could and, get as much. And then eventually it dries up because I don't know, I was working so much at that point. Eliana was a little bit different because I was able to go part time, so she was good. And then Liam was just an easier. I don't know why. Maybe I was just used to everything by then. But I could pump. I could, what? Oh, you know what? Also by Liam, they let me work at home more with Liam.
Mm.
That was 9 years ago. Now I'm completely virtual in my practice right now. I'm still a partner at the same law firm, doing baby cases. But yeah, now I'm completely virtual. But yeah, Liam, I was home more, so I think that probably was the big thing. But yeah, no, try to do it as long as I could. So I definitely believe
Yeah.
in breastfeeding.
Yeah. Yeah, that you make such, that makes me think of just the point of being home and being with your babies in order to make breastfeeding feasible and to make it work, right? Like, obviously, you need to physically be with your child to breastfeed them. And we have such a culture of like, having your baby and then going back to work so quickly. But then we also promote breastfeeding and want mothers to breastfeed. But we don't have it set up so that they can be successful if we're ushering them to get back to work as quickly as possible, at like 6 weeks
Mhm.
sometimes, sometimes even sooner, depending, because we don't have, a federal maternity leave. So it's kind of funny that, we have the promotion of it, and we know that it's beneficial for both mom and baby, and it's healthy and it's good, and we want it to happen, but then we don't have a system in place to help them stay home and also pay their bills and be able to continue
Right.
with their life, right? So it's like it's a little bit hard. And hearing you say, like, with your first it was maybe a little harder and you dried up, I'm thinking maybe because you had to go back to work and you went
Oh
back
yeah.
into like work mode. That's like a whole different the version of you at work and the version of mom Gina is different, and you're stressed at work, and it's probably not conducive to a great milk supply. So that kind of makes sense when I
Oh,
think of that.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, now it's funny you're talking about this, and I'm like, man, those you're right. I'm getting all mad.
Right?
I'm like,
We
I
should
was
get
like,
angry
because
about this.
they do. You're almost like a bad mom if you go to formula too fast. And I
Hmm.
didn't want to be a bad mom. And now that I'm older and I know more of the benefits of breastfeeding, it's different. But yeah, no, back then was I can't be a bad mom. Oh, but I got to go work and pay the bills and travel the country. And yeah, that's
Yeah.
you're right.
Yeah, it's we're asked of too much. Like, we have to be perfect, but we have to do everything. We have to be perfect in our careers and perfect at home and breastfeed for 2 years and all these things. And it's like, it's just not
Uh-huh.
realistic. It's so much pressure immediately, and it's not really possible. We kind of, usually one is going to get more of us than the other, so we end up having to choose which that is. So yeah. Let's see
Yeah.
what else. How did sleeping go? Do you remember? I know you kind of touched in the beginning on sleep deprivation. Do you
Oh yeah,
remember at
major
all?
sleep deprivation.
Yeah.
So my
Yeah.
husband was starting his financial company back then. So that was another thing. I was kind of trying, I was at that early on, I was the one bringing in the income. He's starting a company. So if there's any business owners, or if you're married to one, you get it. It's an insane amount of work. So he's working an insane amount of hours. So, I was always kind of left with, you know, now he helped. But I've always been, the primary one. And you know what? He was really good when the kids got sick. So if the kids were sick, he really stepped up because that is definitely no sleep territory. But yeah, and then you have to go to work and function. I would be up half the night and I would get up in the morning and I would jump on a plane. I would go to New York. I would cross examine an expert for 4 hours, and I would jump back on a plane. I would get back and then be up all night. Because in Michigan, I could always go Michigan to New York, just day trips. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, it's yeah. So I'm already, I would sit on a plane and just immediately just clunk out, and then, or if I stopped moving, my friends started joking. They're like, Gina, we think you have narcolepsy. And I'm like, okay, because I was also the first one to have a baby. So they didn't understand either. They did eventually, but eventually, so it became a joke that I had narcolepsy because if I stopped moving, I would just fall asleep. So yeah, it was sleep deprivation was, definitely something you had to get used to, and you do. It's crazy as a mom. You can function on low levels of sleep. I don't think it's sustainable for years, but there's something that definitely kicks in that allows you to do it.
Yeah. Hormones, probably adrenaline. Yeah, you just go into survival
Hmm.
mode once you're running off like less than 5 hours of sleep, especially like less than 3 hours of sleep
Hmm.
continuously and consecutively. Yeah, it's hard to function. So I'm like sitting here in awe that you hopped on a plane and you go cross-examine someone for 4 hours and come back. Oh my gosh, I remember I could hardly like get myself to the kitchen to feed myself lunch or something. So that's very impressive. Do you
Yeah,
remember a
thanks.
time like that the sleep deprivation, like you started to feel like you were getting good sleep again, or do you feel like that it was kind of until they went to school, like until like kindergarten age, or do you think it was like longer than that? Because I mean, I only have an almost 2 year old, so I feel like even now I'm still going through certain sleep regressions
Uh,
and her like still
mm.
waking up sometimes, you know? So I'm just curious. And for our listeners, that a lot of them are either pregnant or in early postpartum, did you feel like there was a moment?
I think I don't want to scare anybody, but I think it's like kindergarten. So
Yeah.
it's it's like even mine, just having a young baby with somebody like it's just hard. So, I've never got, too good of a night's sleep even when they were sleeping. But I felt like, kindergarten's kind of that time where they become independent. They get on a bus, they get off a bus, they have a teacher, they go, they're away from you for some time, they're pulling, and they just seem to acquire skills, better survival skill. I don't know. So for me, when I really started to get, some good sleep was definitely probably once they started going into kindergarten because my kids are 19, 15, 9. So they're very spread out. Now, of course, once one would go to kindergarten, I'd have another baby. But yeah, so then
Yeah.
Liam went to kindergarten and that's probably about the time when I really started to get some good sleep. But then, too, as you age, so I'm 48 and like I need more sleep now. So I just do. So it's sleep for me, now that my kids are older and probably because I was deprived of it for so long is, it's a priority. So today, oh, you're going to kick, moms will probably get a kick out of this. So in order for me to like write my book and whatnot, I had to change my schedule. We had to figure out what we could cut out, whatnot, because my book took 14 months to write and literally thousands of hours. Okay, so you have an idea to write a book, but to make it happen, you got to change something. So I started going to bed at 7 p.m. and I get up at 3 a.m. And I still to this day do this. My book was published again June 2023, but I still get up at 3 a.m. every day. So today, actually, this morning, I don't know. Sometimes I just get on these kicks, and I'm just in the middle. Just my brain starts going. So I've been working since 2 o'clock this morning. But I will
Goodness.
say I had my first podcast today at 9 a.m. So at 7:45, I took my nap. So I took a nap for like an hour, and then I got up and I did the podcast, and now I'm good to go. Now by 6 o'clock, I'm going to be ready for bed.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
Wow.
no, I have a crazier sleep schedule, but I've had to do that to write my book, and then everything else that goes with it. Because during that, again, I'm still a mom, still a partner in a law firm, now author, and whatnot. So yeah, but I'm telling you, I value sleep. And then on the weekends, sometimes I get really tired, and I will just go to sleep for 12 hours,
Yeah.
depending on what. But I am not I might take another nap after this podcast. So I'm just saying, because when you're older and you can, you're like, hey kids, I'm gonna go take my nap, and you're now independent and you can care for yourself. We're good.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds amazing. I can't wait for that.
Yeah,
I
I nap
used
a
to
lot.
take naps in the middle of the day. That's not a thing anymore. Probably won't be for some more years, but especially if we have a second, because then it all starts over again. But oh, it sounds like a
Hmm.
dream. Sleep is so important. So I'm so happy for you that you figured out a way to get lots and lots of sleep in your life because that's where all the magic happens. That's where all of our, our body repairs and rejuvenates and clears all the stuff out from the day. And it's so important that we get enough sleep. So I'm actually curious how you made that transition. Were you always kind of an early to bed person? Because 7 p.m. to be sleeping, that's pretty early. So did you have to kind of like ease into that, or were you just like, I'm good, I can just hop in bed at 7 and go to sleep?
No, super hard. Very,
Yeah.
very hard. Basically, you go to bed when you can at the beginning, but you always get up at 3, no matter how exhausted you are when you're trying to start. Now, I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
automatically wake up at 3, and I have a default alarm at 3:10 if I'm really tired and I don't get up. Um, but the key is just waking up at 3 a.m. Now, I'd probably recommend doing this at like 4 a.m., maybe an 8 to 4 schedule if you want to write a book or do something, where maybe you need some extra hours in the day or whatnot, because it is a little bit extreme. Um, but once you do that and you start getting up at 3 a.m., like for a couple weeks, everything falls into place. And then I'm exhausted by 5 or 6 p.m. You know, people are getting off work or doing whatever, but I'm exhausted and I can't wait to go to bed at 7. And because of this schedule, I mean, when I my head hits the pillow at 7 o'clock, I am out until 3 p.m. I'm sorry, 3 a.m. out. Unless it's like today and I'm like excited to work on something, so I get up at 2 a.m. But no, I'm completely out. And then that was kind of one of the things that, you know, us as a family kind of figured out, you know, how am I going to write this book? And basically it's like, okay, after dinner, I'm going to feed you all. I'm going to make sure the kitchen's clean or somebody else is cleaning the kitchen, and then I'm going to bed. And then, you know, my family's used to it now. So, but that was something, and then they all try to, you know, let the dogs out, or, you know, if I'm too tired, maybe they help with dinner, you know, whatever. So, and
Yeah.
then obviously if I have a wedding or something, you know, I stay up till 9. Just, I'll stay up a little bit longer. But you know, if I have like an event, like a big event or something, then I'll stay up.
Yeah.
And but I'm telling you, when that happens, if I'm up till midnight for a wedding, 3 a.m. just
Oh
boop.
man.
So
Yeah. Well, this is a good example for anyone out there who's like wanting, you know, has some goal or aspiration of like writing a book or starting their business or doing some kind of project, you know, even if it's just a passion project. And they're like, well, when am I ever going to have time for this as a mom? You know, you could do it. You're going to have to sacrifice maybe a normal schedule, but it's possible
mhm.
to do something like that. And maybe probably easier once your kids are a little bit older, ideally maybe like in school, so they're not waking up throughout the night when you're trying to get those good hours of sleep, you know, from
Right.
7 or 8 or 9 to 3 or 4 or 5 in the morning. So, but yeah, this is inspiring. I'm, you know, before we got on, you were like, you should write a book. And I'm like, oh, I could maybe go to bed at 9 and get up at 5. You know, right now I go to bed more at like 11 and get up at 7. So I could shift that if I really wanted to. So
Well, it's great because the whole world is still sleeping. So
yeah,
that's why, because some people are, I have found some 4 a.m.ers, and
yeah,
that's why
they're
I'm
out
like,
there.
I'll do 3. I at least
Hopefully
have
not
one
10.
hour to myself. And then my 4
Yeah.
a.m.ers may kind of, you know, whatever, chime
Yeah.
in or something like that. But, you know, there's
Yeah.
very those, you know, not that often. So it's like, you know, and not only that, if you're gonna write a book or something, something that takes mental focus, like you
Hmm.
just said, I mean, your brain when you sleep, it like rejuvenates itself. I mean, I am so much smarter at 3 a.m. than I am at like 4 p.m. So, you know, so when I would write, obviously it was the middle of the night, but I had such a fresh brain. I could write so much better. And sometimes if I still had lingering thoughts in my head and I wanted to write before bed, no. Like I would try. And then the next morning I would wake up, read what I wrote and be like, what? Was I drinking? Like, you know, and I wasn't during in the evening, but I mean, it's just it's so interesting the whole fresh brain, rejuvenate, ready to go type, you know, mentality at 3 a.m. versus, you know, later in the day.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I'm thinking of how we're supposed to get sunlight in the morning when the sun comes up, which is, you know, varies a little bit between like 6 and 7 or whatever. And then, you know, when the sun sets, you know, that's when you kind of start getting ready for bed, which in the winter months, 7, the sun has already been down. So like it's already dark. So you're good there. But I'm curious, do you do anything with that? Like, do you try to get sunlight on your face or in your eyeballs in the morning, like once the sun rises at all? Or do you not really focus on anything like that?
Oh, you ask the best questions. So, so, so I'm in Michigan right now, as I talked about, and it's winter and it's rough and there's no sunlight and it's so cold. It was like negative 15 wind chill.
Oh my
So,
gosh.
however, I have not been in a Michigan winter in 4 years. So basically, I was one of those people when COVID hit that I got a house in Florida, and so for the winter months when it was dreary here, I was in Florida. Yes, waking up, sitting on my patio in the sun, and actually I wrote my book that way. And I'm telling you, I know it had a big impact on me because I published my book in June of 2023, and I was in Florida all winter, yes, absorbing that sun. And then here in Michigan, and end of spring, summer, and into early fall is beautiful and sunny. So yes, I need and require sun. So I'm here now, and it's, it hasn't been that bad, but no, but I can't go out. I know what you're saying. I cannot go out a lot of these mornings and get my sun. There's something about bare feet, being grounded with the earth, all of that stuff to just keep your energy, high and happy and all that stuff. So yeah, to help combat that, I keep planning trips to Florida. My husband's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I can't. I need sun. I need to be able to wake up in the morning and just be like, when it's coming up." So actually, while I was writing my book, I have a dog that loves to run the ocean. So when I was writing my book, as soon as the sun came up, I would actually even take him to the ocean barefoot, walk the sand, feet in the ocean, dog running. It was awesome. So there's no other way, better way to start your day. But my kids ended up, we were only able to do this because my kids have been virtual since COVID. And then now this past year, they're like, "Okay, mom, we want to go back to school." So, and they're both thriving at school. So we're here in Michigan for winters again. So yes, as much as if we have a sunny day here, you bet I'm out there in the morning, just looking at my son and let the dogs out. So getting my
Yeah.
rays, absolutely.
Good, good, yeah. And it does count, even if it's not sunny. Although -15, I'm not really trying to go outside in that, to be honest. But the sun being out, even if it's, like overcast, still counts. But if it's -15, honestly, I think you have a pass to stay inside. 'Cause that
Yeah,
is
well, that's good to know because for me, I feel like if I'm not feeling it, or
right.
seeing it, that it's not working. But no, every morning, even in Michigan, except the day was -15, and maybe a couple other days around then. No, I'm out as the sun comes up, definitely taking my dog out, except I look
Yeah.
like an Eskimo, except,
Hey, that
so.
counts. As long as it's getting into your eyeballs. I mean, obviously you don't need to stare at the
Hmm.
sun, but like you're just outside and you're in the light.
Hmm.
Even if it's doesn't look like much light because it's overcast. It's still helping with your body's internal, rhythm and clock for sleep and waking. So that's great. That's great that you do that. I feel like everything I'm asking, you're saying is a great question, and then the way you answered, I'm like, okay, so you know. That's awesome.
I feel like we are totally on the same page with so many,
Yeah,
so many things.
totally. Yeah. All right, great. Well, do you want to share anything else about postpartum and like anything through? I know you're 19 years out from your first, so if there's any, you know, words of advice or anything else you want to share about, being home with little ones, maybe like the difference between having one and two, like did that feel like a big jump? I've heard people say, 0 to 1 was the biggest jump, and actually 1 to 2 wasn't so bad because you kind of already have it figured out, or
Mhm.
some people feel like it does actually double. I've heard someone tell me that it like quadruples, so I think it's just depends on the person and their perspective and what they've got going on. But how did you feel when you went from 0 to 1 compared to 1 to 2 and then even 2 to 3?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was free basically in one. But Abby, my oldest, who's 19, was extremely easy. And so then I'm like, I'm gonna have 5 kids. When she was older, obviously, like she was 2, she was just so perfect. And so then I had Eliana, for almost 5 years, 4 years later, and she was very challenging. I'm trying to be politically correct. Basically, when she was 2, we got rid of all the baby stuff because I was never having kids again. And then as she, got older, I just kept thinking, I'm like, I want a boy. And my husband's like, we talked about it, no more kids. And I'm like, I'm like, this is the craziest thing. But I said, listen, there's like this blonde haired, blue eyed boy. And I'm like, he's supposed to be my son, and I'm just going to love him so much. I'm like, if I have another baby, I guarantee you it's going to be a boy. And he's going to have blonde hair and blue eyes. And he's like, he's so gullible. He's like, really? And I'm like, yep. I'm just crossing my fingers that I was right. And so I got pregnant. We found out I was having a boy. He was born, and he did have the blue eyes, but he had brown hair. So afterwards, my husband came up and he was like, "Wow, I'm impressed. The only thing you had wrong was his hair color." And within 2 months, he was like a towhead, you know, blonde as can be. So yes, I do have my blonde hair, blue eye, little boy. And I'm so happy I do because I'll tell you, teenage girls are challenging. There are hormones, everything's going crazy. Everybody, I used to dress them up really cute and all the fancy dresses and matching outfits and all that stuff. And everybody's like, you just wait, Gina. You just wait to those teenage years. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Till I got to them. I mean, huge adjustment. So it's if you have teenagers and you have a daughter that's turning into a teenager, make sure you're listening to podcasts, talking to other moms. I was so confused at the beginning. I was probably a very bad parent because I didn't know what was going on. Poor Abby, the first one who went through it. After a while, I started to get it. I'm like, okay, I don't think it's her. I think her body's being taken over by aliens or something, or her personality. And then Eliana, my second daughter, kind of started going through the same exact, thing. I'm like, oh, and then then I was watching their friends and talking to the parents. I'm like, oh, this is all just completely normal. So, they're definitely challenging, but Abby now is 19 and way, way better relationship. Eliana's 15, so yeah, it's still hard, but I definitely deal with her better than, Abby at 15. So, but yeah, if a teenage girls start reading books on how to handle them or something. Just there is an art to it, and I just didn't realize it until probably until a few years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, teenage girls are hard. I was one, obviously, at some point, and I was awful. I was crazy. I was mean. I
Mm-hmm.
was, deceitful on purpose. I would
Mm-hmm.
sneak out of the house and lie and just I was like, I don't want a girl. Girls are crazy. I don't want a girl. Of course I got a girl. I have a daughter. But so yeah, it was kind of major gender disappointment. I really wanted a boy. I was like, I want boys. I'm supposed to be a boy mom. And then I found out we were having a girl and I didn't cry, but I kind of wanted to cry. I was like, no, this is not my destiny. Of course, now that I'm a girl mom, I'm like, this is 100% my destiny. I love her and I cannot imagine life without her.
Mm.
But yeah, the teenage years, which I am still very far out from, not looking forward to, but hopefully just gonna let all the crazy things she says to me just bounce right off and not take them personally. Because, like you said, you just get taken over. Like, you become something else in that transitional period of your life when you go from girl to woman. And you're
Mhm.
just trying to figure things out. And a lot of it is hormonal. And, you're just trying to figure out who you are and where your place is in the world. And it just kind of comes off as really you don't give a crap anymore about your family. All you care about
Yeah.
is your friends. And I can imagine that's
Mhm.
very hurtful because some of the things that I said to my mom, I'm like, oh my gosh. I mean, to be fair, we didn't have the greatest relationship and she wasn't perfect either, but I was very mean. So, not looking
Oh
forward to that.
yeah. So you're my Eliana.
Yeah. Yep.
So, and then my husband will be like, "It's because you guys are too much alike," and I'll be like, "What? No, no, she's not like me."
I know that's my fear too. So Rayla, my daughter, is you were saying Abby, your first was really easy, like a perfect baby, and so you're
Mhm.
like, oh, I could have 5 kids. And Rayla was so hard. Just like everything in the book that a baby could do that would make it more challenging, she did. Like everything. And I was like,
Yeah.
I could never do this again. Like we are one and done. I will never have another child. Like you're
Mhm.
getting a vasectomy. We're done. Like
Oh,
I tell my
jeez.
husband, like we're
You're not
done.
kidding.
No, but I mean, as time's gone on, things get naturally a little bit easier as they get more independent, and so we're kind of considering having a second. But oh my goodness, if we have another baby like her, then I think I'm definitely
Say
done
that.
because I was at capacity and sometimes still am at capacity with just her. So it's hard to imagine adding another one, and it's like I'm still trying to figure her out. So I actually kind of
Mhm.
like your age gap, the 4 or 5-ish years, like that sounds kind of nice because then they become a lot more independent, and they can kind of do more things for
Yeah.
themselves. They're potty trained, like, it just makes things easier. And it maybe I don't know if you experienced this, but did you feel like bringing the second one home with your first, did you feel like maybe it was easier because she was a little bit older, so she kind of understand it more and didn't feel replaced? Or do you think she still felt a little bit of jealousy?
Oh, it's Abby was fine because
Yeah.
Abby's the easy one.
She's
So,
like,
and she was
sure.
excited. She did want a little sister, and she ended up being like the best big sister when through everything. She was
Aw.
absolutely great. But then my Eliana, so my Eliana is very similar to your daughter. So I went 6 years before I gave birth to Liam. So I went 5 years before I got pregnant, and then
Yeah.
yeah, it was, and I'm happy I did that because then she was completely independent. Well, not
Yeah.
completely, but very much more, independent. And she does have a really good maternal instinct, Eliana. So when Liam was born, she thought like he was, her baby for a little bit. And I'm like, what? She just wanted to take care of him. So she, kind of transitioned into this really good big sister. So that actually was almost like beneficial.
Yeah, that's so special. Yeah, so that's kind of where we're at, is like figuring out an age gap. Part of me is like, I don't want them to be too far apart in age, but then the logical side of me is like, yes, you do, because you want Rayla to be older so that she can, you know, she doesn't need you so much for everything, because you're going to be needed so much by the newborn. So
Hmm. Yeah.
it's hard to like plan all that stuff out and have it all figured out. But
Oh,
yeah.
definitely. I always, yeah, I called it the working mom thing. Just being so busy, it's kind of as they got independent, it was like, okay. And it was, but then Liam kind of started going independent, and I was like 43, and I'm like, should I? And I'm like, no, too old. Too old.
That was one of my questions, is do you want any more children? But obviously now here, I'm assuming
No,
done.
no,
Not
now I know
adopting.
I just turned 48 last weekend, January
Okay.
20th.
Yeah.
So I am done. I'm
Yeah.
ready for the next phase of my life.
Yeah.
So so where everybody's older, maybe I'll enjoy some grandkids,
Yeah, there you
all that,
go.
eventually, or just enjoy my kids and being older. I mean, Abby's, I feel like, at 19, she's actually she 4404. So in April, a couple months, she turns 20, and pretty soon 21. And I feel like we're becoming more friends.
Mm-hmm.
That she's just not my, daughter. So it's kind of cool.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so, yeah. A woman's life, we have these three transitional periods, and especially as having a daughter and watching them go through those periods too, it's probably actually one of the most special relationships, I would say, the
Mhm.
hardest but most special. So we have the transition. We go from, kind of child to like young woman with our getting our period, and that's
Mhm.
adolescence, right? And then we go through another transition when we become a mom. It's called matrescence, and it's a huge transition that's not talked about and needs support, just as adolescence does, and guidance and woman wisdom. And then menopause is our final transition that we go through. And another time that's kind of like not really talked about. We don't really know much about it besides, oh, you get hot flashes and vaginal dryness, and you're no longer useful to society because you can't produce babies. It's like so much more
Uh-huh.
than that. It's like a rite
I
of
know.
passage, and it's the beginning of the next phase of your life, which is actually really an amazing phase, and it is a gift to be able to reach that phase. So yeah, and then watching your daughter go through those phases is just so cool.
Yeah, it really is. And I mean, for me, I never even understood it until kind of watching it now unfold in front of me. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, okay. One of the last questions I have for you is, when you die, how do you want your kids to remember you?
Oh, as the mom who tried to save babies. That was
Aww.
literally, I know. And you know what? I read that question right before our interview started, and I kept thinking, but sometimes it just has to pop into my head. But I'm telling you, and I had said this earlier in the podcast, but it was, doing what I do professionally, it's always been very difficult. And actually, when I started to write the book, for the first 3 months, I bawled because I had emotionally just suppressed everything that I had seen for the first, 19 years of my profession. And then I had to go back to and remember the families, and then, okay, what can we learn, and what's happening, and how can I, make sure this doesn't happen again? Because, my experience is very unique, and that really I just see, the mistakes. But some mistakes that I've, traveled the country many, many times. I've been in every healthcare system, but I know, that what I wrote will, help families have healthy babies. Because after the 3 months, I finally stopped crying, and there was like this clarity that I'll never be able to explain. But it was like this, just like it was just like this jump board spring. I got this, and it was amazing 14 months. And I will say too, with waking up at 3 a.m., I looked forward to waking up every day, trying to make, knowing that what I was writing, would make a difference, for some families, and whatnot. So that's where, I do hope they remember. And I think they will, because, if you go on Amazon or anything, or you look at my reviews or go on Instagram, I mean, my reviews on my birthday, actually, it was the day after my birthday, the first full day of being 48. I'm like, all right, well, let's see. I'm going to read my Amazon reviews from around the world, because my book sells all over the world, and I did. And I went to Italy, Germany, United States, Australia, Canada, United Kingdom. And my latest reviews from these countries are just, I was just crying. And so I actually went on Canva and I did like a little video, because they're like recent reviews and just like little snippets from the reviews, just these families just thanking me. And it was really neat. And I've gotten so much feedback from people just thanking me, and they feel so much more confident going into, childbirth. And I don't know. So yeah, I know my book will definitely 100% save, at least one baby. Somebody is going to have a baby that is born healthy, because after they read my book, I know it in my heart.
Oh yeah, 100%. You've left a legacy for sure that's going to help for sure more than just one person. So that's amazing. That's truly amazing. Well, with that, where can people find you, and where can people get your book if they want to purchase a copy?
So everything is on my website. It's ginamundy.com, GINAMUNDY.com. So that'll take you to a link to my book. Well, the best place to buy my book right now is just Amazon. And if you just put my name in the search bar, it pops right up. And then I've been more active on social media, which is definitely new for me. I don't. So I've been very active on my Instagram account. So I've been kind of focusing on that and trying to get some things out to, just, hey, these are the podcasts I'm on, or maybe these are some reviews, or this is what parents need to know. But actually, with saying that, on my website, I do have chapter 1 on there for free for parents. It's like a downloadable, shareable thing. And chapter 1 are the lessons from the baby cases. Again, learning in order to prevent, these future mistakes. So that chapter is just so important. You're not going to find that anywhere else. But I wanted that at least on the website, because if people at least know this information, it's going to definitely point them in the right direction, and they're going to know what to do to have a healthy baby.
Awesome. Yeah, great. Well, great. I'll link your website in the show notes. And that's an awesome resource for people, free resource for them to get something to take away, immediately right now, something that they can do right now, which is really nice. So,
Oh, you know what? I forgot though. See, I'm not good at with my social media stuff yet. Because when I say Instagram, I'm supposed to say at Gina Mundy.
Yes,
Let's
that's true.
just kind of throw that out there.
I was thinking back. I was like, I think she said Instagram, but she didn't say her handle. So,
hmm
yes,
I'm
good.
I'm I'm trying. I've never I have had a small Facebook group with my friends and family that was private, and that was I'd post maybe some Fourth of July pictures, Christmas, maybe Easter, you know. And so
Yeah,
this
yeah,
whole let's post all the time is I'm getting it. I got it.
yeah,
But actually,
yeah.
it's kind of having fun with it. My daughters went on and they were like, "Mom, your video it has 1 million views." I'm like, "What?" So
Wow,
there's some good stuff on there that apparently people are watching. So it's
that's
cool.
amazing. Yeah, cool. Well, we'll link your website, your Instagram. I'll even put a link directly to Amazon for people that just want to buy the book. So,
Oh, well, thank you, Natalie. I appreciate it.
yeah,
And thank you so much for having me on. I
yeah.
really enjoyed our conversation. I mean, your insights and what you're doing with this podcast to help families, I'm just absolutely blown away and so honored to be on your podcast today. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Gina. Thank you for coming on. I appreciate your time and you sharing your story so openly and just sharing all your knowledge. It's really going to help moms out there and families. So I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for the kind words.
Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Be sure to follow me on Instagram at the.moms.nutritionist and subscribe to this channel to be notified of each new episode. And if you'd like to support the podcast even further, please like this video and share it with a friend or anyone who could benefit from watching. This helps get the word out there, which helps moms heal and thrive.